Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. And Jack, we got a tweet liked by Robert Chesney.
Bob Chesney coming in hot with the EA Sports like. He likes that their streamers might be involved in the new EA Sports game. You can check out all of the updates and kind of the rehashing of old updates that Bennett shared over on JMU Sports News.
Was he always Robert Chesney, though?
Yeah, he's always been Robert Chesney.
Okay.
Well, so his Twitter name has always been Robert Chesney, and then his @ is Coach Bob Chesney.
Bob Chesney. Wow.
So he keeps you on your toes a little bit.
He can dress it up. He can dress it down. Kind of depends on how he's feeling for that.
Yeah, you gotta get you a coach that goes by two names. Kurt.
I like that.
Signetti never went by Curtis. Which
you could argue cost him. Every time they lost a big game, it was just like the players are looking to him. They're like, "Is it only Kurt?"
Yep, that's what cost them an epic meltdown.
The black jerseys.
Oh yeah, the black. I would chalk it up to the black jerseys more than anything else. If we're being 100% honest.
Cursed aside from all the games that they've won, which is many this year.
Yeah, over 90% in his career as well. You know what else has won at a 90% clip?
17 parlays.
My bets with Bet Online. Just kidding. I don't think I've won a bet in quite some time. Bet Online continues to be your number one source for all of your basketball wagering needs, including pro and college hoops throughout the year. March Madness nearly here. You do not want to miss on any of the action leading up to the greatest month in sports. Up to the minute odds, stats, and trends. You can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in-game live betting contests. All the best player props. Charlotte Hornets, they're going all the way. They made the necessary moves at the trade deadline. They brought in Seth Curry, Grant Williams. That's a Hornets team that's going to make a lot of noise post All-Star break. Mark my words. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or mobile devices. Head to Bet Online today to become part of the team. And remember to use our promo code BELIEVE. That's promo code BLEAV, and you'll get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Shout out Bet Online. Also, shout out to our friends at Three Notched. We love them. We thank them for their support. And they have, as always, have a lot of specials. I'm mostly focused, though, on the fact that they have axe throwing at their Nelson County location. But anyway.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Are we taking a field trip there soon?
We might have to. They don't have that in Harrisonburg. I guess you could bring your own, but it's probably frowned upon.
Yeah. Could you imagine walking into the Valley Collab House with your own axe and you just go, all right, where am I throwing it?
Axe throwing. Maybe they could fit that in on like Wednesday. Because right now, obviously, you got Minuteman Mondays going right across your screen. $3 Minuteman pours. Tuesdays, half off cases. And Friday, first half Friday, new brew every week, released on Friday. But Wednesday and Thursday, there's some room for something there.
Axe throwing. You know where else there's room for something?
There's a reason Christopher William Jewelers has been voted best of Virginia year after year. It's not just one thing that sets us apart. It's everything. It's the selection, extensive and unmatched, with every engagement ring, loose diamond, and fashion jewelry chosen for quality and brilliance. It's the service. From our diamond experts to our master goldsmith, our team shares a passion for what they do, and it shows. It's the atmosphere, both glamorous and laid back. See for yourself why people can't stop talking about Christopher William Jewelers in Harrisonburg and Weir's Cave.
I guess there's room for something there.
I don't know. That was a poor transition. Speaking of poor transitions, Taurus Jones, Abby Nwabaku-Akonji, and Solomon Van Horst, more so Taurus Jones and Abby Nwabaku-Akonji, they had poor transitions to new teams, therefore are returning back to James Madison.
Yeah, 3. So they released the spring roster, which I guess is not much of a release. It's just kind of like a web page update. But they
imagine if they made that into like a release, like it's a whole day, like National Signing Day. Coaches get into the office at 5 a.m. They're dropping a graphic for everyone on the roster.
Here's our roster. But yeah, they have Nwabaku-Akonji and Taurus Jones. I think are probably the two maybe most interesting, and then Van Horst coming back. But the other two, the defensive guys, were in the portal, didn't have anywhere to go. I imagine some, if not a lot of that, is injury related. Where both those guys were banged up in 2023. So maybe hard to get a Power 5 or a high-level G5 to be totally sold on what you're doing if you're coming off injury compared to somebody who's healthy, considering there are thousands of people in the portal.
Yeah, exactly. I think bringing back Torres Jones is massive for the Dukes. A 2022 third team All Sun Belt type of not type of player. That was who he was as a player. He's finished the UVA game with 8 tackles and a tackle for loss, and that was really his only healthy game. And he didn't even finish that game fully healthy. I believe he left sometime in the third quarter, and then he never really regained kind of the footing he had in 2022. When I would argue that Jalen Walker and Torres Jones were the best linebacker duo in the Sun Belt. But then you had Aiden Fisher come on. Aiden Fisher, of course, with Jalen Walker went to Indiana, so it leaves a hole filled by Dobbs. And now it seems like Torres Jones, if he can be healthy, I think he can return to an all Sun Belt caliber type of player. And Nwabaku Akonji, I don't think you can understate how important he is coming back. A prototypical edge rusher frame, 6'3", 220-ish, a power 5, 270.
He's a big boy.
I did not realize he was that large, and he plays on the edge, so a very good size. Power 5, originally coming out of high school, went to Minnesota, transferred here a few years ago now, but had been kind of battling injury for most of his Dukes career. And then he started last year as kind of one of the go-to guys. Jalen Green, Mikel Kamara, and Nwabaku Akonji were kind of the 3 big names that were going to be starting on the edge for the Dukes with Chroma. Turns out that Bucknell, something happened. I think it was an ACL or an Achilles. He was out before the season even started, and he was going to be a key piece to that rushing front. So I think bringing him back after you lose Green, Chroma, Kamara, Carpenter, big time to bring Nwabaku Akonji back.
Both those guys, yeah. Big to keep them. Obviously helps with depth, but they're capable of starting. And linebacker, I'm interested size-wise. They seem a good bit bigger. Torres Jones is going to be your sort of smallest linebacker in that, I guess, 4-man room at this point. But Jacob Dobbs, they listed also the height and weight of the guys who are on the team now. Dobbs, 6 feet, 233. That's bigger than they've had in the past. Trent Hendrick is 230. I think he's 6 feet, 230. Torres Jones is like 215. But then Raymond Scott, who they also brought in from Fresno State, also played at USC, 6'1", 245. So a different kind of linebacker for the Dukes in 2024. They're going to be a good bit bigger alongside Torres Jones.
Looking forward to it.
And then my guy, Solomon Van Horst.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's officially had the waiver approved for an extra year or if he's like on the roster with the assumption that he's going to get one. Not sure if that's official or what, but when healthy is a really good punt returner and can play running back in the slot. So it gives him sort of an offensive gadget, I would say. But realistically, if he's healthy, he's probably like your starting punt returner, and that's where you're hoping he can contribute the most.
Yeah, so folks, don't worry. It's another year, another opportunity for us to ask for Solomon Van Horst in the slot.
That's huge for me. That's something I've done.
That's been your calling card for a while. That's been your calling card for a long
without it.
Yeah, so thank goodness he's back.
Massive.
All right, that brings us to men's basketball. They go 2-0 on the weekend. They win the MAC Sunbelt Challenge. They go 2-0 in that as well. Really just an overall big weekend for the Dukes. They kind of look dominant, and I have it in the outline. I guess we can just start right at the top. Am I stupid for thinking that at-large is potentially back on the table?
I think it should be floated with, I guess, the caveat, right, that they have to win out in the regular season and probably make the Sun Belt tournament final. Is that fair?
Yeah. You essentially have to win out and then lose in the conference tournament championship.
So I've got a story coming out on this tomorrow morning. They would be
plug.
JMUSportsNews.com. They would be 30-4 in that scenario with the loss in the conference final. So win out in the regular season.
And assuming that's a quad 2 loss.
Yeah, that's probably a quad 2 loss. So it's not necessarily killing you. 30-4 is pretty good. The schedule's bad. Like, it's real bad. So I think that's going to hurt them a significant amount. But I think it's kind of like fringe in play, the at-large.
Imagine if they had just beaten App one of the 2 times.
Or if they'd taken care of business against Southern Miss, which is just like an ugly-looking loss, even on the road.
Well, the most annoying part of that Southern Miss loss is I hope their coach is okay. I hope that he gets the medical attention he needs. But he stepped away from the program.
Well, and they had Corbello healthy. So
and they had Corbello healthy. That was my next point. Like, that's just
totally
it's not the same.
yeah.
Like, if we had played them tomorrow, I think we win by 30.
A very different scenario with Corbello, without Corbello, and then obviously having a head coach available. So that's a tough one for JMU to swallow that one. You're right about the apps, especially because beating App on the road would have been quad 2, and it's like a fringe quad 1. That's the other thing that we got to consider. If a couple of the teams that JMU beat or lost to have a nice finish, some of the Q3 losses could turn to Q2. You could have a Q2 like win pop up that happened in November, but right now is Q3. Southern Illinois is on the fringe. That was a neutral site game. App State is a few places away from becoming a quad 1 loss on the road and then a quad 2 loss at home instead of Q2 and Q3. So there's a lot of moving parts there. But they're 54th in the net as of this morning, 61st in KenPom. The Dukes are in a decent spot, and 30-4. I don't know. That just feels effed up to leave a team that's 30-4 out of the tournament.
30-4, and you got to imagine, like, they do what they need to do against Q4 teams. They blow them out. They are likely going to have 2 more blowouts on their resume after this weekend. Probably 2 20-point wins, potentially one. We'll get into the 3-notch weekly preview in a little bit, but one of them will probably also be like a 30-point win.
Certainly could be, yeah.
And those wins help your net. So you could be flirting with like a top 40 net by season's end.
That'd be huge if you could definitely get inside the top 50. If you can get close to 40, that'd be big. I'm excited.
Then you have to pray for no bid stealers too.
Yeah, there's the no bid stealer stuff. There's how you stack up. And then I've got a question for you.
Hit me.
Right now, every quad, they have at least 500 or above. So they're 1-0 against Q1, just the Michigan State game, which is hilarious. You open the season with Q1, you don't play another
Q1
like the NCAA tournament, maybe. Like, pretty wild. Q2, they're 1-1, so it's 500. They're not above 500, but 500. I think they're 4-2 against Q3 and then 15-0 against Q4. If they could have it where if the app game becomes Q2, is that better for the resume or worse? Because then you have a losing record against Q2. Like, I wonder how the committee views that kind of stuff, where it's like that loss would improve on paper, but at the same time, it would make you seem like maybe you're not as good against.
I think it would work in the Duke's favor. I think at this point, you want to, if you want an at large, you want to root for App State in every game from here on out, because you want them to put that to potentially come a Q2. So then it goes from being a bad loss to a good loss. Because like I hate that argument, but that's an argument where like you got to see if it's a good loss or a bad loss. Right now, it's an loss. If it becomes a Q2, it's a competitive Q2 loss that I think they see as a good loss.
I'm going to pull up a bubble team and look at how many. The other thing that's fascinating when you look at JMU is like, let's find a bubble team. St. John's, I think, is considered a bubble team right now.
Sure.
46 in the net. They're 14-10 overall against D1 teams. It's the volume of opportunities against Q1 and Q2 that's so jarring. St. John's is 2-7 against Q1 and 5-2 against quad 2. So overall, what is that? 7-9. So a losing record against those, but 16 games. JMU's had 3.
Yeah.
Like, the strength of schedule is so different that it's hard to say they're going to get an at-large if it's like they're beating the crap out of really bad teams, which they should get credit for winning by a lot of points. But I don't know. Like, Hampton's terrible. Coppin State's terrible. Morgan State's terrible. Georgia Southern in conference is terrible, even though they're like in the middle of the pack because they somehow have like a 500 conference record despite going winless in non-conference. It's ridiculous.
What were they going? Oh, when you're filling out your bracket on ESPN Bracketology or the bracket competition,
yes.
And you click the little information on each team, and it's like, these were their good losses. These were their good wins this season. Yeah. JMU's going to have 1 next to their name. And
they could maybe put Akron in if Akron's like in the tournament.
Which they won't be unless they win their tournament.
But they could, though. They're like the 1 seed in the MAC.
But like, think about how funny that is. You're going to click on it and like you'll go to a random other team and they'll have like 4 good wins next to their name. For JMU, it'll be Michigan State to open the season, Akron at home. Not good. It is a very bad schedule, but but the Dukes are doing what they need to do. Every cliche in the book you can head out. You can only play the games on your schedule. You can only play the team that's in the gym at the same time as you. All those cliches. The Dukes are doing really what they need to do, especially against bad opponents. Being undefeated against Q4, not just being undefeated against them, though, but blowing them out by an average margin of victory of double digits.
And that's what they got to keep doing right now. 16 of the 22 wins are by double digits. They need some blowouts to help those predictive metrics and boost the net a little bit. And then obviously if you get chances in the Sun Belt tournament against decent teams, maybe a Troy, a Louisiana, or App State, got to take advantage. And then obviously if they win the conference tournament, you'd be 31-3 if you win out, 31-3. Win over Michigan State. If they get in, I could see them at like a 10 or 11 seed. Because they would also have that win, presumably over App then on a neutral floor, which helps boost the resume that much more deeper. So
it could be big time. And something that's big time with JMU was the play of Michael Green III against Akron. He went 4 for 5 from deep, and this is after a really rough start to begin conference play that saw him getting benched. Would you say that he's back in rhythm? Are you able to use this one game sample to stamp that MG3 is that clutch bucket that he was to start the season?
I don't know if he'll be that good, but he looks like his confidence is back, which is helpful because there were a few games in conference play for a while where like he would have open looks at 3 and just wouldn't even look at the rim. And he looked kind of out of it. In the last couple games, he started to look more like himself, where he'll attack the rim or take a shot, and if he misses, he misses. If he makes it, great. But he just plays with more confidence now than he did for sort of a stretch at the beginning of conference play, which I think is huge because realistically, you need him or Friedel or Wooden to be very much on from deep if you make the NCAA tournament. But before that, in the Sun Belt tournament, like there's no scenario where those 3 are cold from 3 and they win the Sun Belt tournament. I don't think.
No, I agree. And like you said, he's starting to find just that confidence again. He went 3 for 7 against Arkansas State, but he took 7 shots, which is really good to see. None of them were from behind the arc. And then he goes 6 of 9, 4 of 5 from deep against Akron. I do think it's something really funny is that he has balled this season against non-conference opponents from deep, like just electric. He's shooting 34.6% on the season. Against Sunbelt opponents, he's shooting 10%, 9.4 to be exact. I'm rounding up for him. So you got to imagine against non-conference opponents, he's shooting at like a 40% clip if it's coming down that much.
Do you rest him in the conference tournament and save him for March Madness?
Maybe. I mean, maybe. Clearly, the MG3 back in rhythm might just be that he's lethal against non-conference opponents. They actually brought him in just for the NCAA tournament. Now, if they somehow get, an at-large draw at a point in the NCAA tournament against App somehow, some way, it's over.
It would be really funny to see him just like can't find it against Coastal, but they play like Duke or something in the NCAA tournament. He goes for like 20.
Robert Gustafson, what do we need to do differently if we play App State in the tournament? This is kind of the biggest question with everything. I think that is whether or not they get an at-large or if they are getting the auto bid. I don't think the Dukes have to do anything differently. I think they just have to execute a game plan better.
Yeah, do what Byington tells them to do, right? With an actual shot fake and get fewer shots blocked, maybe take some more threes, find ways to get Friedel open. But they've been in both of those games. I think the home one is one they should be kicking themselves over. They probably should have won in Harrisonburg. They had this horrible slow start and then a great middle of the game. And then they just kind of went cold in the last 3 to 5 minutes and they still only lost by 4. That's one that like they should have had.
Yeah. This weekend, they have a really big opportunity to just destroy bad opponents. It's time for this week's 3-Notch Weekly Preview. They're finishing out their home slate against 2 Georgia schools, the Georgia State Panthers and the Georgia Southern Eagles. First up will be a Thursday game against the Panthers. They come in 11-13 on the season, 5-7 in conference. However, they're 0-4 against top 100 KenPom teams. Jonas Hayes, the head coach of the Panthers, is in his 2nd season. And they're led by Lucas Taylor, Dwan Odom. Odom, very used. He's one of the most highly used players in the Sun Belt. And he's also efficient. And he's been kind of not the one, but a really big bright spot for Georgia State this season. but their offense doesn't match up well at all. And I think they may struggle to break 60 points.
This will be an interesting one. They've been okay, or at least a little better offensively because they don't turn it over in league play. But they're kind of, I feel like, inconsistent all around. Defensively, they're not great, but they somehow defend the three really well. But their defensive metrics are still terrible, despite being one of the like 15 best 3-point defenses.
I love KenPom. But do you think sometimes that, like, especially like when you're looking at it at such a granular level with a 3-point shooting, it says they're really good at defending it. Have they just gone against teams that may have just had cold nights?
It's possible. I think there's something to probably good 3-point defense, but they're also getting cooked inside. So I don't know if teams are just bullying them inside and then taking contested threes or something for no reason. But their overall effective field goal percentage defense is just outside top 100 at 101. But they don't force any turnovers. They don't really block any shots. And
you're speaking the Duke's language.
That's not great. So it's one where I think JMU should be just fine because they kind of like to attack downhill and play a little recklessly at times. But if you're not forcing a lot of turnovers, that seems like a nice combo.
It might be the game where Terrence Edwards finally finds a rhythm because he's been kind of iffy the last. I know his box score stats when you stop watching the game and you look at the box score. He has a positive plus minus. I think he shot 50% against Akron and had like 15 points. But man, sometimes it looks a little rough throughout the process, but this is a game where if he can drive and go downhill and just be a slasher, maybe he can refine that type of rhythm that he had early on in the season. I mean, it shows he hasn't really lost the rhythm. We're just being really nitpicky. He's one of the best players in the entire conference and can take over a game at any moment, except when he's going up against Justin Abson and App State. But like, this is like the prototypical Edwards game.
This does. Yeah, the stats do really scream. Like, they don't force turnovers and they're bad at guarding the rim, which is just like his thing. It's just like taking guys on and going to the rim. So it just seems like it should be a Terrence Edwards special.
Yeah. And then the next game, Georgia Southern, they come in with a 5-20 record. They're 5-7 in Sun Belt play. So they started the year 12?
Yeah, they started the year 0-12. Open conference play with a win.
Open conference play with a win. They've now lost their last 4, including their MAC game. So they finished the year winless against non-conference. And somehow in Sun Belt play, they're hovering right in the middle of the pack and might get a bye in the first round of the conference tournament because the Sun Belt is that strong of a basketball conference. Charlie Henry is in his first year. Would you chalk this up as a successful first year, not winning any non-conference games, but being very competitive in Sun Belt?
He's just building them for conference play, man. He just wants them to be ready when the battle comes.
Tyron Moore is really the only offensive threat. I believe he's the only player with a 100 offensive rating or better. I put down for the matchup to watch everything. Georgia Southern doesn't defend well. They don't play good offense. JMU should win by 30.
I don't know. They're a weird team because I don't think they're very good, but somehow like they took App State to overtime recently. Like, probably should have won that game. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know what they're doing in conference play to be somewhat more competitive, but obviously they've found a way to at least be respectable. Maybe the Sun Belt just sucks is part of it, but
yeah,
I don't know. If you're JMU, you're thinking you're probably going to win this one by 20 plus. That's got to be your mindset. KenPom's got him favored by 21, which is sort of the metric you need to look at too when you're talking about like improving your predictive metrics.
You got to win by more than 21.
Covering that spread basically is like what'll do it. So you beat Georgia Southern by 2, like that's going to hurt your net and your KenPom and all that good stuff. If you beat them by 42, you're going to have a nice little burst forward. So it's one where if you can get up early, you kind of got to keep the starters in, I think, in some of these games down the stretch of the season and try to blow some teams out.
Do you think Byington has that in the back of his mind? Do you think he's playing for the at-large at this point? Or do you think
he is.
Okay.
But he also usually doesn't put walk-ons in until pretty late anyway in some of these blowouts. So I don't think it'll change it much. But if I'm him, I'm talking to the walk-ons and I'm like,
Holman
if I put you in, if I put you in, I need you to go off.
Jarrell Pope, I need you to just chuck threes.
Because there are a couple games where the Coastal Carolina game that they almost
Yeah, you
won
only
by,
remember this because you lost a bet.
no, I didn't lose a Coastal bet. They won that one by 38.
Oh, sorry.
But that that was one where I think they probably could have won that game by 50 if they wanted to. And I know that it's like, oh, it's poor sportsmanship to put up 115 against a conference team. If they have if they can put up 115 against Georgia Southern, I think they should. Like, I really think if they have a chance to really blow teams out, I think they should go pedal to the metal, because you can get your Ken Palm like inside the top 50. And if you get a net that's looking at like 40 because of the blowouts, like, yeah, it's a stupid system that allows you to do that.
But
you got to do it.
And that helps you with non-conference scheduling next year, so you don't have to have one quad one game. Like, I know I talk about it like every year about that, but if you finish with a top 40 net, you could schedule A10 schools at the AUBC.
But how stupid and like somewhat messed up is that? It's like, if we beat Georgia Southern by 53 instead of 28, maybe we'll get to play VCU next year. Like, what? But that's kind of what it feels like at this point.
That's the system.
Yeah, beat them by 50.
Speaking of teams that play just absurdly amazing schedules year in and year out, it's Lacrosse over at Centera Park. They started their season with a top 5 win over North Carolina, an absolute thriller, 19-18 in overtime. Our very own Daniel Merriman was there to cover the game for us, and I don't know if that was his first lacrosse game at Centera Park, but we can ask him because he's joining us now on the podcast to break down that game, to break down kind of his experience and what he saw out of the Dukes. Daniel, how are you doing on this Tuesday night?
I am doing excellent, Jack. Pleasure to be back on the pod. Happy to talk some women's lacrosse. That is not my first game at Centera. It is my first game covering a team at Centera Park, though.
I knew it was a first. You picked a good game to start. It was 19-18. Dukes jumped out to a 4-0 lead, and then that was kind of the only big lead that the Dukes were able to, or was it 3-0? It was really the only big lead they were able to create in that game.
Yeah, it was a constant game of runs. Carolina and JMU really traded like 3-0, 4-0 back and forth. I think the biggest run for Carolina was 7. The biggest run for JMU was 6 goals straight, where they just could not get a stop. I mean, these goalies were getting punished the whole day. It was a shootout and truly looked like two of the best teams in the nation. It was a really high-scoring match. You alluded to it earlier. Ended regulation at 18-18, and it took a final shot from Caitlin Morgan on the first possession of overtime in sudden death to seal it for the Dukes. Overall, was incredibly fast-paced. Again, there was some pretty bad defense at times, but at the same time, it was also just really good offense and some of the best attackers in the world going back and forth at each other.
Yeah, it was an awesome match. Great result for the Dukes, obviously. What's sort of your thoughts on that defense? Not to go straight to the negatives.
All right, Bennett.
No, but I was curious because they're so young defensively, JMU. What are your thoughts on what the defense might look like in a month or two if some of the players, I guess, maybe find more of a rhythm?
I think in first game, especially against a team that is as good as Carolina is, you're always going to get your weaknesses exposed. You are not going to come out of the jump with a polished product, and that's okay. But the fact that they were able to weather the storm, the fact that Caitlin Bowden, even after getting taken out for the backup in, I believe, the middle of the second quarter, comes back in the second half and has some absolutely critical saves down the stretch to be able to even extend this game into overtime. The defense in also the first, I think it was 5 or 6 minutes, came up with 4 straight stops. And that comes after JMU had 4 less draw controls in the game. They lost 22-18 in that manner. So Carolina had more possessions. They had just about the same amount of shots as JMU, and they weren't getting nearly the conversion rate. We'll take a look at the live stats. But if we have Caitlin Bowden, who ended up having 7 saves on the day, Carolina had 2 different goalkeepers. They combined for 5. She had a 28% save percentage, whereas Carolina's starting goalie had a 25%. Their backup goalie had a 17% save percentage. So at the same time, this is against a quality top 3 team in the nation when they beat them, and they outplayed them on the defensive end and outplayed them in goal. And that was Bowden's first career start as a sophomore. So there's a lot of youth on that back line. There's an incredible amount of poise, however, and a lot of connectedness. There was tons of fast break offense from defensive stops that was allowing this team to get out in transition, push it through the middle zone, and extend their prowess into the attackers, into the front of the crease, and led to, I think, 3 or 4 fast break scores. So that defense, while it wasn't like A1 top tier, best in the nation, shut down type of stuff, it was certainly signs of what it could be and had a lot of good moments. So I have plenty of faith. I think it'll just take them round into form and show what they're really capable of.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'll be the nice one and focus on the positive here, because Bennett just dives right into the negative. Peterson and Epke combined for 12 goals. I think Epke, she finished with 7
and an assist.
That is just an insane number. And coming into the
was
year,
the national player of the week, by the way, for that 7 goal scores.
Just an absurd, and like all of the focus coming into the season was on Isabella Peterson for good reason. She averaged a hat trick a game last year. I'm going to mispronounce it. The T. Wharton, the National Player of the the National Player of the Year award last year, was a finalist for that. All of the focus is on her, and then Maddie Epke starts this year and goes, watch this, just gets named to National Player of the Week stat. Like, just an insane game from them. What did you see out of the Duke's attack in this game?
Do not let JMU's attackers get to the left side of the crease, or it's going to be a draw control about 15 seconds later. They were pretty unstoppable, and I'm not gonna lie. And it was against some incredibly quality athletes. Carolina recruits with some of the top in the nation. They had one of their transfers, I think it was Ashley Humphrey, who transferred in from Stanford, led the NCAA in assists last year, and she was quarterbacking them the whole day out of that midfield. I mean, they were playing against really good quality opponents and defenders, and at times, especially Peterson, was just playing bully ball. It could not get a stop either side, frankly. But the attack for JMU was incredibly poised. We're getting downhill at will. I want to say Epke was 7 for 11 on goals to shots. Like, they were incredibly efficient too, which against that type of defense is astounding. So it was just a clinic the whole day. Watching even Marchetti, the midfielder, who had a hat trick and I want to say 2 assists on the day. Had 3 goals, so she had a hat trick. But Casey Noblock, I believe is how you pronounce her last name, comes back from injury last year. She has 2 goals and 2 assists. It was super well-rounded and definitely had some star power. But overall, the attack for this team is going to lead to, I think, a top 5 offense in the country. They're that good.
They're nuts. Yeah, Epke, just a sophomore, is crazy. 10 draw controls, too. Just a stellar game for her.
Which was big for her to grow within that role, because the game started a little rough in the circle.
Yeah, JMU's had some draw control issues over the past year in particular. I remember the Syracuse game in the Elite Eight sticking out like a sore thumb. They have the ability to win these draw controls at a pretty high level. Peterson and Epke are the main draw takers. They say they practice against each other a bunch in practice, are constantly filming each other to watch their tick, they're reacting, what moves they're using, that type of stuff. So they're quite aware that they need to be elite for this team to get where it wants to go. And that's always nice to know in game 1 that that's a major focus, because you have a whole season to work on it. You have a whole season to try out new moves and things of the such. But yeah, 10 draw controls for Epke was massive. I think Peterson had 6. And it was the story of the game, was how close could they keep the draw control battle, was how close the game was going to be. They kept it within 4, and they won by 1.
Yeah, imagine how scary they'd be if they were like dominating draw controls, which they will against teams that aren't named North Carolina at certain spots this year.
That schedule is rock solid, but there's definitely some points where you're like, ooh, that's going to be rough for the other team, that is.
They got Virginia Tech next up. You got Towson on the schedule. Towson, a perennial CAA contender. Maryland, at UVA. Johns Hopkins, they played the NCAA tournament a few years ago. Like, just an absurdly tough schedule that should prepare them for, the postseason in a way that I don't think a lot of teams can necessarily say.
They have the best schedule in the entire athletic department, and it's not close.
That's the take. That's the correct take. Here's another take. Lacrosse is the best program on JMU's campus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Consistently, yes.
Yeah.
I think if you're talking about highs of the high, that softball run is up there.
That's true.
That's a true. Yeah.
Odyssey was generational. We can't ignore that.
That's a good
And
point.
football at their level, being a G5, is about as good as you can get. But in terms of national level dominance,
Yeah.
nobody's touching lacrosse. I mean,
Yeah,
they're ranked number 3 after the first poll was released. That's
Yeah.
unheard of for anywhere else in Harrisonburg.
Natty within the last decade. Yeah, they got some good stuff. And it sounds like, Daniel, it sounds like they're already kind of thinking national title again from what you had heard post-game. Is that right?
Yes, there was some significant murmurs and talks about it kind of in and around the stadium. When you get a team this good, it's like the old joke, like, oh, what's next? Going to win in the Natty? And they're like, yeah, no, actually. And when you talk to Isabella Peterson post-game, she says, hey, 2018, the last time we beat these kids, Carolina, we beat them twice, and the second time was en route to a national championship. And they did it in overtime in a season opener in 2018. They do it in overtime in a season opener in 2024. So I think that there was some significant focus on it. They've been training as if that's the goal. Maddie Epke said post-game, we believe that we deserve it. Now it's our time to earn it. And that's just one heck of a quote. But yeah, just there's nothing but dedication, connectiveness, and high-level athletes with an incredible coach behind them. To boot on this roster and within this program, I think the national championship is solely set on their sights right now.
Best
a lot of
coach on
games in
campus.
between now and then. But.
Yeah, a lot of games. A lot of tough games, but best coach on campus too. That's my other take.
Yeah, you got some that are getting poached. Seems like Shelly Clay's a Duke herself, a graduate, is going to be hopefully staying around for a little while. Has already, but gosh, is she awesome.
A lot of wins. A lot of wins for Shelly.
I was about to ask earlier. There's a couple of current Dukes that are coaches now. You have O'Regan. You have Laporte. Is that a Duke as well? Am I mistaken in saying that?
I can't remember.
She was an assistant. I don't know if she played for JMU.
I don't know if she did, but I know that Clay's did. So there's a couple of them. And
Lou Rowe, how could we forget?
Oh, I can forget. But overall, she's definitely the best returning Duke from player to coach, I think, that the university's ever seen.
Laporte was Roanoke College, so like
adjacent,
local ties, but obviously she's not like leaving JMU to coach Roanoke College softball. So
you'd hope
disrespect to the ODAC.
No, there's no like separate alum poll. That's all.
Not a disrespect to a Division III conference.
I was in there too. Come on.
200 wins for Laporte now.
Really? Oh, yeah, she got that this past weekend.
Which game did she get that in?
They played 5. I have no idea.
One of them. They tweeted it like after the weekend, so I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But no. Very fun team to watch. If you all get the chance to head out to Centera, I would recommend. It's a great time. There was honestly probably 600, 700, 800 people there. Had some students in attendance as well. The lacrosse parents tailgate harder than just about anyone you'd expect. It's a fun time. It's a little rowdy down there in Centera, so I would recommend you coming out. It's a really good team that you're going to be able to watch and hopefully en route to a lot of postseason success this year.
Yeah, sometimes those Olympic sport parents go hard in their tailgates.
Oh, yeah. The Carolina contingent was awesome. I pulled into the parking lot up at the top of Centera, and I just see that they have like a big old blue, like the Tar Heel blue trailer with a mini bar set up out of the back of it, got a TV going for a game. I'm like, oh, you all are organized. Okay.
They probably just go around the whole East Coast setting up shop at each of their away games. And I bet Chapel Hill on a women's lacrosse game day is probably very lit.
Oh, I can imagine it's electric. But hey, JMU, everything's school turning into hopefully a shell of that atmosphere sometime soon.
Fingers crossed. Well, Daniel, thank you for taking the time out on your Tuesday to talk some lacrosse. We hope to have you on throughout the season as the Dukes go on a little bit of a natty run here throughout May.
Yep, very excited to watch them. Very excited to be reporting back with you all. Again, got my ad on screen. If any of you all don't follow me already, would love to have you. I post game updates as well as just JMU random shenanigans. So thank you very much for having me on, boys. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of the pod, and take care. Cheers.
You as well. See you, man. I think lacrosse is going to win a national title.
I think they're right there, man. And Daniel did a great job with coverage of that game, which was a heck of a game. Nice for them to be able to finish it off too, because they had a, I would say, fairly comfortable. It's about as comfortable as you can get against North Carolina lead in the final 5 minutes that evaporated real quick.
Yeah.
So to finish that thing off in overtime, I think it's just huge for confidence, because that's one you can come back to, honestly, in May and say, hey, we beat North Carolina.
Yeah.
To open the year. Obviously, they have a lot of other opportunities to build confidence given the very hard schedule. Well, that's a big one.
Yeah. Changing gears back over to the Hardwood, wrapping up kind of basketball talk. Women's basketball, they're coming off a 1-1 weekend where they fell to Ball State 72-57, a tough finish. So unlike the men's team, they go 0-2 in the MAC Sunbelt Challenge, but they did get a good win over South Alabama. And you may look at that final score and you go, how'd you only beat a team that was winless in conference play by that number? I will say it showed a good bit of resolve, because South Alabama, a winless team, came back, stormed back, made the game a lot closer than I think it ever really should have been. And then the Dukes just kind of pulled away late in the fourth quarter and showed why they're one of the top teams in the conference. Now, how did they let South Alabama into it? That is a conversation that you can have. But showing that resolve, I think, was a good sign moving forward, because we've seen kind of second half meltdowns out of the team. Toledo in the MAC Sunbelt Challenge earlier this year. So to see them weather the storm and then go on a run of their own was really good to see.
Yeah, no shame in the Ball State loss. Ball State is very good. Also doesn't really matter. Not to they're not getting an at-large spot. It's kind of just like a good test against a good team that won't hurt you in the conference standings during conference play. I think Coach O was kind of happy they had it, even though they lost. It's another reminder of some stuff maybe they need to get better at. 2 games at home this week: Georgia State, Coastal Carolina. Georgia State game is going to be a good bit harder than Coastal you would expect. Already lost to Georgia State by 10 on the road, so that's an important one. If you can get both of those, or at least the Coastal game, you're in pretty good position right now to be in the top 4 seeds for the conference tournament.
Yeah, they're currently tied for second in the Sunbelt standings, 2 games behind an 11-1 Marshall team. All right. Is it time?
Yeah, I think it's time.
All right. JMU Baseball signed Marlin Ikenberry to an extension through 2026. Announced yesterday, Monday, February 12th. This is his 3rd extension since he has become the coach of JMU Baseball of less than 3 years. He has never had a contract securing him to the Valley for more than 5 years. He brings a .500 record into this extension with 2 postseason wins, missing the postseason more than he's won in the postseason.
By postseason, you mean NCAA eligible games?
Sorry, by postseason. No, Bennett. He's never even sniffed one in his coaching career between VMI and James Madison. No. I'm talking conference tournament.
You obviously don't like this move. Take me through.
No, you started off. You
Okay.
work me up. You work
All
me
right.
up, because I'm more just annoyed with it at this point.
I was surprised that this happened.
Stupid.
Sorry,
stupid's mean. Surprise, yes. Go carry.
I was surprised this happened. I've seen a lot of people talk about Marlin Ikenberry.
I think it's an I, Daniel.
Yeah, it's being a super. That's whatever. Being a super great guy, being a great leader, a guy that's respected in the community. That's all important. I think that's all good. Those are good things to have, right? You'd like that in your coach. At a certain point, and we've talked about this a lot, at a certain point, you've probably got to value the baseball program. If you're in the Sun Belt, if you're in a region of the country that really cares about baseball, I don't know, JMU fans are always talking about the standard is the standard, the standard is the standard, especially with football.
And the standard's league titles, competing for league titles.
And baseball's been kind of just meh and irrelevant for a decade. And it seems like a sport you can't have that.
Well, it's a revenue sport. You can make money on baseball. You can get money by having NCAA tournament success. And they just haven't had that. And this isn't like Matt Brady. So yesterday I tweeted that Matt Brady made the NCAA tournament once in his career. He beat LIU Brooklyn, a team that no longer exists, in the first four. So technically he had an NCAA tournament win. He had CAA success, regular season success. He had a few 20-win seasons in his back pocket. He was about 9 games over 500 in his career. And after a 20-win season where they fell in the quarterfinals of the CAA tournament to William & Mary, Jeff Bourne and Matt Brady parted ways. We can read between the lines. Matt Brady was fired, and the quotes that Jeff Bourne said in 2016 when they parted ways was essentially, he didn't win in the postseason enough. I told him before the season started. This was a quote. I told him before the season started, if you don't make it to the CAA finals, it's over. And they didn't. They lost to William & Mary in kind of embarrassing fashion after having a great regular season. And they let him go because there was no postseason success. There was none. Except for 1 year. Marlin Ikenberry doesn't even have that 1 year. If he had a 1 year where he just they went on fire, maybe the year, they had 8 MLB professional arms on their staff. I don't know. I'm just throwing out random years. You do that and you make an NCAA tournament regional and you maybe win a game or two in the NCAA tournament regional. You're, a pitch or two off from making it to the supers. I wouldn't be upset about this because of everything you said. He's a great guy. He's so nice. He's awesome in the community. He is the kind of a shining light in college athletics where sometimes the coaches aren't the nicest people. And if you have that, once every 5 years, that one great run where you go into the NCAA tournament, you make a regional, you potentially fight for a super regional. I wouldn't care if he had a 500 record. Heck, I wouldn't care if he had a sub 500 record, but there is no postseason success. And like you said, the standard is the standard. As stupid as that sounds, as JMU fans, we have been told that the standard is the standard. The standard is winning titles. The standard is competing in NCAA tournament games. Every other program has done it. Lacrosse, they've won a national championship. Football, they won national championships at the FCS level. They then become ranked in the AP Top 25 in their first year moving to the FBS. Women's basketball, they went on the road and they competed super hard against Ohio State after winning the Sun Belt tournament. Men's basketball, they're poised to be an at-large team in one of the worst leagues in college basketball. Softball, they go to the women's college. You can just go down the line. Women's tennis has had extreme success. And then we just turn a blind eye to baseball. It just doesn't matter.
It's confusing. To play devil's advocate, right? Bourne's leaving in the spring, contract year for Ike. So it would have put the new AD maybe in an uncomfortable spot where he has to essentially be like, I'm not bringing you back to a coach he barely knows. Or Bourne has to do it before he leaves, whatever. Either way, it would have been maybe a little uncomfortable. So I get that to a certain extent. New AD is not going to have to worry about baseball, sort of as an immediate focus, not going to have to make this immediate baseball hire. So maybe some positives there. Last year, JMU showed some life in the Sun Belt. They had a winning record overall in the year.
Yeah, how'd their postseason go?
Not a good postseason, but they did have, 31 wins. I think tie is the highest in the Marlin Ikenberry era, 15-13 in league play. They swept, or they won 2 out of, I thought they swept them. They went 3-1 against ODU, solid team. Nearly beat number 21 Virginia, if you remember that one, 9-8.
See, this is what bothers me about baseball.
Nearly beat Virginia Tech.
That's what we're saying.
Swept
Louisiana. In midweeks, right? Virginia Tech in a midweek, UVA in a midweek, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
No, midweeks you're playing against bad arms.
All I'm going to say is if you don't want to go when they hang the banner for nearly beating Virginia Tech, that's fine. I'll go alone in the spring.
Okay, perfect. But the 31 wins is fake. The 31 wins is fake.
Because
look at their non-conference.
Beat up on bad teams.
Yeah, they were 20-0 in Q4 because their whole non-conference. They have a worse strength of schedule than JMU men's basketball.
Yeah, Here, I'll find. Don't worry. I'm going to look at the RPI from last year because they were right around 100 last year in RPI.
As you're talking, I'm going to just kind of say a few more things about Ikenberry.
Okay.
I hope this baseball team and Marlin Ikenberry proves me wrong. I will be the first in line to shake his hand and apologize for everything, because I want JMU baseball to be great. The Valley, we say it every podcast, is such a hotbed for baseball. You see how they come out for the Valley Baseball League. They come out for the Turks, for the Stanton Braves, for the Newmarket Rebels. Like, everyone up that 81 corridor gets fans, the Winchester Royals. Like, the Valley wants to care about baseball. And if JMU baseball can put together a good product, you're going to recruit the area extremely well. You're going to just bring in a ton of fans, and there's going to be an aura in spring of excited. And we haven't had excitedness in spring since ever. There was a point, but
JMU finished 100th in RPI last year. They were 18-2 against quad 4 teams. They were 13-23 against quad 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, that's not good.
No. I don't know. It's one where, like, I'm with you. I hope we're wrong. I hope it works out great. It kind of just feels like they've delayed the inevitable for a very long time. And
I think
I would like an explanation as to what Bourne's thinking. That's all. It's not like I think Jeff Bourne's a great athletic director. The athletic department's thriving, right? They're not on payroll or anything. But I would love to like learn what he's thinking here, because it's just surprising to me.
Yeah, especially because I think my main point, though, is you fired Matt Brady, sent us into 4 or 5. Was it 4 years with Rowe or 5?
I think it was only 4. I don't think I think it was 4.
So you fire Matt Brady, who, granted, JMU wasn't at the echelon they're at now, and that's where Bourne wanted to take JMU. But you fire Brady, and then you bring in Rowe, and you go into these doldrums where you become kind of the laughing stock of college basketball. You're in the dumpsters, and then you bring in Byington, and everything gets better. But yet you got rid of a 20-win season guy who gave you some success. And I'm saying the Brady fire was correct. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying if you use that logic, why is Ikenberry still around?
I have a lot of questions. I'm interested to see how they do. But if it's another like 500 season, it's borderline inexplicable to make this move, to be honest. Like,
it's not borderline. It is. He's a 500 coach, which, fine, whatever. We don't have to bring that up. He has no postseason success.
I just don't understand what they're trying to get out of the baseball program. Like, I don't know. It's a lot of years of the same stuff to be like, yeah, let's keep doing that. Surprising. Yes. Very surprising.
You know what it kind of reminds me of?
What's that?
People?
No, it never does. I mean, these people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might, but it might work for us.
That's JMU. Has it ever worked for Marlin Ikenberry? No, never has. But it might work in his 8th year.
I don't know. I don't know what the logic is. Well, I mean, I'm interested to see how this year goes. I think there's obviously not more pressure now that he has a contract extension, but in a weird way, there's like almost as much pressure, at least for me, because like Bourne's like, this is the move. This is what we think is best. If you go 500 again, I don't know how you expect any fans to show up in the 2025 season.
I honestly don't. I don't think if you struggle to start the season, if you struggle to start conference play, I think it'll be hard for fans to go out this season.
Well, it's not like they have a great setup for it either. They open with 4 games against Arkansas. Their first Sunbelt series is on the road against Coastal. Like, I don't know. I don't know if there's a ton of like, I'm very hard pressed to see this going any other way than it has previously gone.
And baseball's a sport that I kind of view as like lacrosse. Lacrosse is a mid-major team that went on to win the national championship. You can't do that in men's basketball. You can't do that in football. Like, this is a sport where it is possible that you can win a national championship if you have the right coach and the right roster. Coastal did it a handful of years ago. They're in your conference. Your conference is capable of producing a national champion. and you're content with being fifth and having no postseason success. And you're saying that fifth is good enough, where in every other sport, you've shown that fifth is not good enough. And as a matter of fact, you're going to fire coaches with a better than 500 record.
I think it's mostly frustrating because I think there is a contingent of people who really want baseball to be good.
I think us.
Yeah, and I think it's just tough to like every year. It feels like every year, to be honest. They just roll out like Bourne has like gone into a Google Doc. He's put together 12 like standard quotes of like why Ikenberry's cool, and they just roll them out every other year. Where it's like he's a great leader, and we like what's happening a little bit, and we think it could continue.
It feels like we're still feeling the ramifications of COVID on this program, because
if COVID doesn't happen, he's not the coach anymore.
That's the thing that's the insane thing, right? Like,
yes,
is what he signed an extension like in 21 for 2 years, which would bring in 20 he signed a weird extension like around COVID, like a 1 year extension to be like a prove it deal. He didn't prove it. He didn't prove it, and then he got another extension that ran us to this one, and this was his final year of that second extension. He didn't prove anything in those years, and then he got another 2-year deal.
I also haven't, I think it's worth noting, I'm not clamoring for them to like fire him before his deals are up. I've just been confused why they've decided to renew a deal that was ending without any NCAA tournament appearance. Like I've seen some people that are like I don't want, I'm not going to call for someone to lose their job. I'm not calling for him to be fired. I'm asking what you think he's done when the contract ends to get renewed for another deal.
Yeah, and when I'm kind of saying fire him because that's fine.
I get what you're saying, but it's like at a certain point when the deal's going to end, like I thought for sure.
I thought he was not getting it. I was shocked when I saw this.
And the timing is also very confusing. If you wanted to bring Ikenberry for 3 more years, why did you not do that last summer? Why did you not do that in the fall? Doing it like a week before they're about to get smoked by Arkansas is super strange timing. And I don't think looks good because there's a contingent of fans who question his ability as the coach. Why would you roll out the news before playing number 3 Arkansas in a 4-game road series?
There's a strong chance they get outscored 50-6 this weekend.
What if they get, they might get swept and you're like, we're doing this again. And that maybe they steal a game. I don't know. But like, if you don't steal a game, it just feels like a colossal mistake. And then you're playing a good Virginia Tech team, or I'm assuming what'll be a decent Virginia Tech team.
They should be good. They start their season against Charlotte. So I'll get a full scouting report on Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has the second best prospect at third base. They return their entire Sorry, I won't get into Virginia Tech. I was doing research on them.
Why would you have all of your fans questioning your move and then like stare an 0-5 start in the face? From a PR perspective, I'm surprised, among many other reasons. Do it in the fall when people like the football team's rolling and you say Marlin Ikenberry's extended, nobody will care. That feels like that would have been the time.
And then their home series. What's the plural of series?
Home games. I don't know.
Their home games this year. So you start the season at Arkansas, then you bring in Tech for a midweek, and they're going to nearly win that game. Then you got to
get one of the first 5. If you don't get one of the first 5,
they're not.
I'll just let you talk about baseball on the podcast.
And then Fairfield, Cornell, and Niagara are your 3 home series to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's.
And Niagara is a midweek Tuesday, Wednesday series.
But you better feast against those teams because last year they dropped 2 to UMass Lowell. Like they had all these results that don't make any sense. We're right when they're about to build. I don't know. I want to see 35 plus wins. I want to see some magic. I want to see them making noise in the Sun Belt Conference tournament. I want to see them putting together like a borderline at-large case. Because otherwise, what are you doing?
And so the thing is, like we always talk about in men's basketball, how it's so hard to get an at-large. For women's basketball, it's non-existent. You can't get an at-large. Sun Belt baseball, you can get an at-large pretty easily. Troy's expected to make a regional. There's a chance that Coastal is going to make a regional. Georgia Southern will make a regional. ODU, after a down year, should be pretty good this year. I'm probably missing a team or two in there too. Southern Miss is always a really good team. Like, you're playing NCAA regional teams, top 75 in the RPI on a week in, week out basis. You can get an at-large in baseball.
Let's see it. Let's see some action here.
All right. Follow along with our Twitters for more unhinged takes about baseball. News or snooze?
News or snooze? Yes.
Presented by Christopher William Jewelers. Both luxurious and laid back. It's where Virginia gets engaged. First one, Bennett will give me 3 quotes or storylines, and I'll react if they're newsworthy or snoozeworthy. Hit me with number uno.
Okay. First one, storyline. JMU men's basketball up to number 54 in the net rankings.
Dope. Newsworthy. I think it's newsworthy for the reason that I always bring up, and I think listeners are probably annoyed by now. Not the fact that you can get an at-large, but I think it really helps your non-conference scheduling. We clamor for it each and every year that their non-conference schedule, especially at home, stinks. I think you can throw away Buffalo now, and you can sign some 2-for-1s, some home and homes with VCU, Mason, Richmond, Radford more often, and then even branch out and maybe get, Maryland in there, or maybe West Virginia. You can go South, Duke, UNC, Wake, Clemson.
Bring Duke home.
Probably won't get Duke home, but you know what I mean. You'll be able to have a better.
You could get it some games, yeah. All right, number 2, Kirsten Fleet, Sunbelt Pitcher of the Week. Her first college week as a softball pitcher.
We'll break down softball's 4-1 weekend in a little bit, but Fleet, fantastic. Everything that she has been built to be. A sub-1 ERA in her first weekend as a collegiate pitcher. Wins Sunbelt Pitcher of the Week. 10 out of 10. Kirsten Fleet, stud. JMU has found their next ace.
Yeah, good start. All right, quote. This is from Jeff Bourne. Sorry to get you back to this. Marlin enters his ninth year with JMU Baseball this spring. Has been a great leader of our student athletes on and off the field. Baseball is an important sport with our membership in the Sun Belt, as the conference prides itself on being a top 5 league in the nation. Ike leading our team to a top half finish in the Sun Belt was a great accomplishment in our first year, and sets the stage for further growth for this program.
I mean, Bourne knows what he's doing. He's written these 3 other times.
Got to throw in the Sun Belt stuff this time, though.
He's not wrong. It does set the stage up well for further growth. You had a better than expected first year in the Sun Belt. Everything he said is right, but it's the other 7 years that you're looking at, and you're like, well, the sample tells me probably going to regress to the mean.
I think, yeah, you're also at a point now with baseball where, like, obviously the global pandemic's, a valid excuse for some weird stuff, maybe. But I think at this point, like, even if there are injuries and stuff, like those kind of excuses, I feel like no room for them anymore, right? Entering year 9, like, you kind of just need to field a roster that makes a regional in one of the next 2 years, I would think.
So JMU finished 5th in the Sun Belt last year, right?
7th, I think. Top half was like literally in the top half.
So they're now predicted to finish 10th in the preseason coaches poll. Looking at the teams above them, Coastal Carolina will make an NCAA regional. Southern Miss will make a regional. Troy will make a regional. Louisiana, good chance at making a regional. Texas State, ODU, and Georgia Southern all have chances to have a great year. That's the top half of the Sun Belt. Like,
well, that's what's so fascinating is, like, again, I'm just mostly questioning, like, the why and confused, because I don't think it's very often, given JMU's athletic success, that a coach who's never made a regional in 8 years and has a team predicted to finish 10th in a 14-team conference would get an extension.
Especially for a team that views itself and a program and a whole department that views itself as a top echelon, top tier group of 5 school.
People act like they're a borderline P5 half the time.
And we can't field a baseball team that is competitive on a week in, week out basis.
It's a big year for them, I think.
Yeah. I hope they prove me wrong.
They
Like,
got a chance early. They got a chance early, man. 5 Power 5 games. Boom, 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 boom.
If they go 2-3 to start the season, I will be super stoked.
That'd be massive if they could do that. You got to at least get one of the 5, I think.
And near wins don't count.
No, that's another thing. There were too many of that last year where it's like they gave UVA a game. Like, okay.
There was a literal quote, I think it was from Ikenberry or one of the pitchers from a year ago when they nearly beat UVA. And it was like, we thought we played a good game. We nearly beat them.
It was like a confidence boost, yeah, from...
You know what else is a confidence boost? Beating them. Or UMass Lowell.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I know you are. I know. On a happier note, softball. They opened their season up 4-1. A tough loss to finish the weekend. Kind of ends it on a sour note against Southern Miss. But overall, they did what they needed to do. The pitching staff looks absolutely electric. Fleet, Sunbelt Pitcher of the Week, came out, put together a sub-1 ERA, looking she's living up to every bit of the billing. You're gonna chatter here about some strength of schedule, though.
Well, the schedule
if there's one thing I know, it's Bennett talking about SOS.
The strength of schedule is not that hard. So I saw a lot of like 4-1, unbelievable. I don't think it's unbelievable. It's like it's okay. I think probably honestly kicking themselves are not 5-0. Like they didn't give up more than 3 runs in a game. They gave up what? 8 runs, I think, all in 5 games, and you lost one of the games. I mean, a little disappointing, right? To lose 3-2 against a Southern Miss team that I think is picked to finish like 9th or 10th in the Sun Belt. And they won't meet in league play this year, but maybe they'll meet in the conference tournament or something. I think maybe some disappointment there, but overall, yeah, the pitching staff, there's a lot to like. Fleet is legit. I think the way I view it, like Fleet's the future of the program and like the obvious ace already. That's a true freshman. Started off a little nervous in her first start. I think she walked her first batter, and Bella Hensler, the catcher, actually talked to her after the first batter, like came out to the mound to settle her down, which is just like, that's GOAT stuff from the sophomore catcher. Pretty exciting. She did walk the next batter, but then she settled in quite nicely after that. She's good. She's really good.
That accounted for 67% of all of her walks on the weekend.
Yeah, she's a stud. Peyton List, the Virginia Tech transfer, showed some nice stuff in the circle as well. Redshirt freshman. Those two kind of feel like you can build around them moving forward. Alyssa Humphrey was phenomenal. Molly Grubb did some nice things, struggled a little bit in her second start, which was against Southern Miss and only lasted about an inning. But like the two veterans, Grubb and Humphrey, I think will help throughout the year and be a nice boost. But I really think the future of the team is kind of Fleet and List in the circle and what you can do to build around those two. And then from a hitting perspective, left a lot of runners on base. The lineup was not cooking. They did a few nice things, got some stuff going. I think KK Mathis was batting 5th, which was kind of surprising. She was then batting 3rd against Southern Miss. So they switched that around. I don't really know why KK Mathis was 5th. I think boost her up the lineup, give her more ABs. She's really good. That'll be a positive. But I also think maybe it was just a slow start to the season. They've got some young players in there. They're probably still getting their feet a little bit wet. So I went in and did some statistical digging. 21.4% of their hits over the 5 games were for extra bases. I think they had 42 hits and like 9 of them were for extra bases, 7 doubles, I think no triples, and 2 home runs. Last year, even 40% of their hits went for extra bases. The Women's College World Series team was about 40% as well of their hits going for extra bases. So their slugging percentage is super low this weekend. I think that can change over a larger sample size, but that was kind of the big thing. It's just like a ton of singles and walks where it's hard to do that in softball because I think part of it is just you're very close to the pitcher. So like you're going to get a lot of strikeouts. It's hard to make consistent contact over innings, especially if you're facing, even if it's a mid-major, their ace or whatever. But if you can get some doubles, home runs, right? One swing, you get runs, tends to be pretty good. They hit a ton of homers last year. Only 2 in the first 5 games. So something to keep an eye on. Probably need a little bit more pop, but not a bad start. They're coming home this week. It's their first February home games, I think, like ever as a program. They usually don't do it because of weather, but taking the risk this year. I think Saturday the high is like 39, so they'll probably play, but
Dope.
it'll be cold. So we'll see what they got. I'm excited about the pitching staff. I think the hitting will come around. Still kind of seem like NCAA regional appearance would be my gut feel for like the ceiling.
Yeah, and with the lineup, they might only have to produce 4 or 5 runs on average. Like this doesn't have to be a big, huge pop in the bat type of lineup. They need to consistently be able to scratch across 4 runs because, like you said, over the 35 innings this last weekend, they had a 1.4 ERA, a 1.09 WHIP, Fleet 0.51 ERA, Humphrey a 0.88 ERA. They pitched the most over the weekend. They only allowed 22 hits in 35 innings, struck out 28. A really good show. Like this pitching staff is going to shut down a lot of teams. You're just going to need your lineup to hit consistently and scratch runners across any way possible. Reed Butler currently leads the team with 5 ribbies.
Yeah, she was doing really well. And then I thought Bella Hensler in the leadoff spot, I mentioned her sort of leadership at the catcher spot. She batted .450, so she had a very nice weekend as well. She's really good. They've got some young players that I think another year, another 2 years, you look at the team in 2025, 2026, if they can keep this nucleus together, I think they'll be like a very, very dangerous top 25 caliber mid-major.
Shout out Abby Campbell real quick. A 250 average, a 538 on base.
She was walking a lot. 5 walks. They walked a ton. I think they had 26 walks and like whatever the math is on the other thing. It's like 33 singles and 26 walks. A lot of like getting to first base. Need to get some runners in.
And maybe with KK Mathis kind of slotting in wherever she goes can provide some of that pop. Reed Butler, a home run. Jasmine Hall, a home run as well. It's going to be interesting. They're going to have to replace
Hannah Shiflett.
Shiflett was the home run
She
leader
had
with like a lot
of pop. So we'll see. Isabel Fishman, I think, was maybe a pleasant surprise for me coming off an injury last year. I think she batted like 230 maybe in 2022. They had her high up in the lineup, and she had some nice things. She was 3 for 4 in the opener with an RBI.
Big time. Anything else you got to add before we get up on out of here?
Excited to watch softball and baseball. We're in that time. I think both those teams will be interesting as they sort of battle for regionals. And of course, lacrosse is just like head and shoulders above every athletic program at the school, like going for natties.
Softball, baseball. I hope they can make it to a regional. Lacrosse, if they don't win a national championship, this season's a failure. There's levels to this.
They're so good.
Yeah, so you can keep up to date with everything happening with JMU Sports News over at jmusportsnews.com. Bennett just wrote an article highlighting EA Sports' new college football game, NCAA college football game, breaking down what you can expect from JMU in the game. I think teams that are officially in it, that announcement is coming in a few February 18th when teams are like going to tweet their involvement, which I'm pretty sure it's all teams. But
except for like FCS schools, basically.
But Bennett wrote about that, wrote down some stuff on Torres Jones, Abby, Nwabaku Akonji, and you can stay up to date with everything we got going on our YouTube as well. Bennett broke down top 5 most impactful transfers coming up in 2024, the 5 that he expect. And so you can go over and check that out. And you know what I did realize? Well, we forgot listener questions.
Oh my God, listener! Let me ask you the listener questions
because this was the first week in like a month where we remembered to tweet out like questions.
Yeah, we always forget. How early did we tweet this? Pretty early. Okay, I'm gonna hit you with questions.
Okay,
this is from Daniel Merriman, who was on the podcast earlier. What winter/spring sport do you think has the most underrated postseason potential?
Winter or spring sport with the most underrated postseason potential. So my options are baseball, softball, not lacrosse, and then the basketballs.
Essentially, or women's golf, men's golf.
Softball. Yeah. Daniel asked one in our YouTube comment section where if you listen to the live stream, you can drop questions wherever you're listening. Daniel Merriman, who is the best player in the athletic department? And then he immediately followed it up with, and why is it Isabella Peterson?
She's electric.
It is. She's so good.
Okay. This is from Steak Sauce.
Steak sauce, A1, baby.
Are we at risk of losing Mark next season, Mark Byington? And if so, how do we make sure we keep him?
I don't think you're keeping him if a Power 5 school.
I don't think they have any ability to keep anyone.
Yeah, I think at this point, the way you keep him is you disconnect his phone. You don't let him take any phone calls. You actually put him in an underground bunker with no cell service or Wi-Fi, and you just wait out until the next season starts. That's the only way you're keeping any of the coaches, Bob Chesney included. Honestly, you could put Bob Chesney in there now because
You can
Boston,
put players in this now.
Yeah, you might have to.
You're
put
not
players.
keeping anybody. You hope.
I don't think Byington's gone after this season, but I think he's gone in the next 3 seasons, and there's no way we can keep him.
Yeah.
Unless somehow an anonymous donor donates like $1 billion and the athletic department budget is set. You can donate to Duke Club and Montpelier Collective, more so Duke Club because Montpelier Collective is just the NIL. But unless there's like a horde of a lot of donations coming in, you're probably not keeping any of these coaches.
No, if they have like an elite level coach in any sport, Gene, you can't really compete financially.
JMU, Byington's one of the lowest paid coaches in the Sun Belt.
Yeah, to field a roster that's just like the best in the conference.
One of the best mid-major rosters. He's one of the lowest paid mid-major coaches.
Yeah, he deserves more money for what he's doing. Okay.
Yeah.
From Sean Conway. How important is the women's lacrosse win this past weekend, especially this early in the season? And what are some events in the remainder of the women's lacrosse season?
One of the events coming up this weekend, I believe it's this weekend. They're playing host to Virginia Tech.
Wednesday.
I don't like non-conference schedules.
It's a weekend for some people.
No, is it? They're playing host to Virginia Tech on Wednesday, tomorrow on Valentine's Day. So if you can get about there for that one, that's a big event. But really, their whole home slate is going to be just good game after good game after good game.
Yeah.
Unlike other, and this isn't a slight to other teams, JMU has just been a top-tier, top-ranked lacrosse team for such a long time that they can bring in, the number 3 team in the country to start the season. But that win is really, really, really important because we came in with all of this talk. They lost to Syracuse, 1 game away from making that run to carry North Carolina for kind of the Final Four. And then you start this season, there's all this talk around the team. They're taking on a tough UNC squad. And it was kind of a barometer to see where they stacked up. And they stacked up very well. So it's a big win.
A lot of years where they open with UNC and they're like a top 10 quality team and they still lose by like
10.
6. Yeah. So that was a nice one. Also, the game sponsor for Wednesday for Virginia Tech is Pepsi. Shout out Pepsi. Okay.
I'm bleeping that out for the podcast.
Next question. Bill Papp.
Funny.
Talk about the impact of Horton this year in hoops. Feels like he might be a little under the radar with the gritty style of his game.
He's he's a glue guy.
Monster.
I mean, he shoots it not great, but well enough. He's a dog on defense. He does exactly what's asked of him. He'll play 30 minutes. He'll play 15. He'll do whatever you want from him.
Yeah, he's a beast.
I mean, his impact, that was a fantastic get coming from the College of Charleston.
Yeah.
He's come in. He's filled the role extremely well. I don't know if he was coming in thinking he was going to be a starter and then was kind of a 6th man coming off the bench, a 7th man coming off the bench. But I mean, he's an experienced forward who plays bigger than his 6'6" frame. He's made 1 start this season. In that 1 start, he went 8 for 10 from the floor. On the season, he's shooting 51%, averaging 22 minutes, 7 points a game. I mean, he's doing everything they ask of him and more. 4.6 rebounds.
Well said. He does it all.
Glue guy.
All right, from Mangy Dog. What's the most effective way to communicate JMU Lacrosse's dominance to our Sunbelt friends, aka wave it in their smug, unattractive faces, asking for a friend?
Trying to think of an analogy for this one.
I think for me,
It's like Coastal Carolina winning the NCAA baseball championship.
I think it's tough to be in the Sun Belt, and if your baseball team's getting waxed, to be like, yeah, but have you ever seen our lacrosse team? Because they're baseball people through and through. So I don't. Maybe you just like celebrate this one, in the Sun Belt. You don't even have to rub in the Sun Belt fans' faces.
That was very morally high of you.
Well, you can save it for football season when we get into weird arguments about nonsense.
Yeah, we do. All right, what's the next one?
All right, Dan Miller at Wanna Be or Bad. Anyone else rooting like
That's
mad?
a great ad. Wait, that is a fantastic ad. Wanna be or bad. All right.
Anyone else rooting like mad for teams who we've already played, or is it just me? Assuming that's men's basketball. And then baseball talk. How do they look this spring? Do you have any games/series circled?
Yeah, I'm rooting for App State to win out. Lose in the Sun Belt tournament to us, but if not, win out so that becomes a quad 2 game. Really for everything. Southern Miss, if they can just like win out too, that'd be really, really freaking helpful because that loss looks worse by that second. Baseball talk. A few guys named to the preseason team. Fenwick Trimble is one of the top prospects in the Sun Belt. He should be a really good player. Any games series circled. You know, the fact that they're playing Fairfield at home in a series, I think you can't miss that. Niagara in a midweek series. I mean, a Tuesday, Wednesday against Niagara, you got to pack Veterans Memorial Park for that one. No, they don't really have much. Arkansas is probably the only series that you're like, this is fun, but it won't be fun because they lose by 15 in each game.
Worried a little bit about the Niagara series if it gets chippy. I know that rivalry the last few years has been just brutal. And
have they played them the last few years?
I have no idea. You hope they can just contain their emotions. That Tuesday game against Niagara, it always gets pretty heated.
It's a trap game.
So, they're absolutely going to lose one of those two. All right, I think that's everything, unless I'm missing one, but I don't think. I am.
What do we need to do differently? Nope, that's all of them.
Nice. So
for Bennett Conlon, I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. I did the whole spiel earlier about where you can find all of our stuff: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of the above. JMUSportsNews.com. This has been the JMU Sports News Podcast, presented by Bet Online.